Tracy Benson, CEO and co-founder of Obsesh, a real-time platform and marketplace connecting the world's top athletes with consumers. I'm excited here today because we can bring together a group of remarkable women that are changing the game, using their voice, and helping elevate women to the place that they should be in sports. And so today we have a panel featuring great athletes. And the panel, the topic is women in sports and why the future of female sports is not later, but is now. While strides have been made to close the gender gap, as it relates to fandom, podium prizes, media coverage, sponsorships, and brands, we're still not close to having equality. And so this is a conversation and a dialogue about what athletes deserve, what they're noticing in the field, and what they are experiencing from their own voices. Let's go over some quick facts and numbers. So the sports market is massive in America alone. Globally, it's more than $80 billion in value. $55 billion is spent on events by consumers. $33 billion is spent on tickets and stadiums to go see those athletes. And back in the day, we had sports, let's roll it back all the way back to, Greece, the Roman gladiators. Today, we're on the verge of the Olympics adding new skateboarding and new sports like surfing. So what we've got is a change, and what we're seeing is more women than ever are joining the ranks. We could go back in time to say how many women were in the first Olympics or in the sports a long time ago. But this year in Tokyo 2021, even on the verge of a global pandemic, we're seeing 51% female athletes are going to be at this year's Olympics competing. That's 51%. We just went over that curve. We see more than 47% are fans, are consumers. They're women. Women want sports too, and the athletes. We're finding ourselves in a new time and a new world. And so I want to dig right in and let these women introduce themselves, and we can ask the hard questions and hear from the voices of them. Ellie, let me start with you. Tell us a little bit about your background, and then we'll get around to everybody, get those introductions, and then we can dig right into the questions.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ellie Smart. My real name is Eleanor, but I go by Ellie. I am a professional high diver for Team USA and a full series diver on the Red Bull Cliff Diving World Series. This is going to be my 5th professional year. I started diving when I was 5 years old and fell in love with it. I dove platform diving. There's springboard and platform, and I always loved the platform, which was higher up. I went on to dive in college, and then for me, the Olympics was never going to happen. So I actually retired, never thought I'd dive again, and then found high diving as a sport and saw that the Red Bull cliff diving had now included women into their series. And so it was like a whole new door that I didn't know could be opened. And I decided, why not give it a try? And so now I dive from 20 meters opposed to the standard 10 meters that you see in the Olympics. So that's a little bit about my journey and what I do.
Hi guys, my name is Kamika Bingham, also known as Bangs on the track. I am a professional and Olympic sprinter. I do the 100 meters, so I don't like to get tired at all. I started track at the age of 15. I actually used to be a national gymnast, and I had to quit the sport because of financial burdens on my parents. And in 2015, at the age of 21, I was the fastest woman in Canada and anchored the women's relay to a bronze medal on home soil. And a year later, I got to experience my first Olympic Games in Rio. I am currently still training for the Olympics this year in Tokyo 2021. And even though I'm always trying to go fast off of the track, I've had to slow down and think about where I can make an impact. And so I created Meet My Melanin to talk about racial inclusion and diversity.
Hi, everybody. I'm Erica Vikander. I'm a professional snowboarder competing on the Freeride World Series, representing the USA. I have been in the professional snowboarding world for quite a while. I started in the slopestyle realm, which most of you are probably familiar with. It's the crazy jumps and tricks in the terrain park, and had my shot at qualifying for the Olympics in Sochi, and unfortunately tore my knee. And so this is how I found myself in this free riding path that I'm in now. And I'm very passionate about the outdoors, sustainability, and protecting our environment. So that's something that's at the forefront of my mind with all of the partnerships that I create for myself in my career and the people that I like to surround myself with. And I'm proud that the tour is also, taking some really big steps to help offset our carbon footprint, because traveling the world as a competitive athlete is not the most eco-friendly thing. And I realize that. So it's always kind of a confliction for me internally, but I'm happy to be here with the rest of these amazing women today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Danielle Diamond. I'm originally from Las Vegas. I've been playing basketball since I was about 6 or 7. You could say it ran in my family. My grandfather and both my uncles coached basketball, played basketball in college. So as soon as I was at the age where I was deciding which sport I wanted to play, basketball was it for me. I fell in love with it. So I played collegiate basketball at Northwestern University right outside of Chicago. And then I played professionally overseas for the last 7 years. I even represented Israel for their national women's basketball team for multiple campaigns. I have been very fortunate. Basketball has led me to travel the world, even the country as well when I was younger. But just to gain so many experiences through basketball. And during my time during the off season, I have held camps. I have held individual trainings, especially for young girls who are trying to use basketball to get to the next level, whether that be on the court or even off the court, because I just believe basketball, you can learn so many skills, life skills even, that are transferable to off the court as well. So now I am trying to stay involved with the sport as much as possible, potentially holding camps and developmental camps here in Vegas, and might even be looking to have international teams come here, play in Vegas, and send girls here in Vegas overseas to gain that experience even at a young age.
Hello, everyone. I'm Fanny Avril. As you can guess, considering my weird name is, I'm not from US. I'm from France, and I'm currently speaking from Switzerland. I'm from south of France. I'm not a professional athlete. I like surfing, I like skiing, and I just promised myself to just work in my passion. I have a background in international business law. I quitted law firms like a couple years ago and I decided to start working in my passions and surrounded of people who share the same values than me. So yeah, for now, I'm specialized in marketing, communication, athlete management. I'm working for the Freeride World Tour as a global PR agent and also as surf instructor during the summer. I'm super happy to be here, and I'd say that my goal is to share in-depth stories about incredible women athletes around the world, and push that in the medias to journalists and give them the visibility they deserve.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for great introductions and giving everybody a sense of who you are. And of course, toward the end of the panel, we'll provide all the ability to connect with them and follow them everywhere. So Ellie, I'd like to start off with you. You have a very fascinating sport, a fascinating history, and achieving the status as one of the top elite divers in the world in one of the most difficult, ever-changing conditions of everything. How did that come to be? And what is it like trying to compete for the podium or the prize money? Because you do have a lot of spotlight you have to share with great male divers in the field. Tell me a little bit, or tell the audience a little bit about what that's like and what that's been like as your career has grown?
So my career started off, as I kind of mentioned in my intro, when I was 5, I jumped off a diving board and just loved it. And I always was kind of that weird driven kid. Like I didn't want to just do things, like I wanted to be the best. So I remember like being literally 6 years old and practicing my autograph. My dream was to be an Olympian, and I would have done anything to do it. And when I was 15, I actually researched the top coaches in the United States. And I did this whole presentation to my parents of why I need to move away from home to go train for the Olympics to make this dream come true. And so I packed my bags at 15, said goodbye to my family. I lived in an apartment by myself. I actually did my laundry with dishwashing soap on accident for the first couple months till my mom came to visit. So that lots to learn. I'm an only child, so I got a little spoiled in some of those normal things growing up. No, but so then I moved away, and to be honest, it became kind of clear pretty early on that like my Olympic dream wasn't going to happen. As much as I wanted it and as hard as I worked and, you know, as many hours as I put in, I just didn't have that same level of talent that the top did. But I was able to go on and dive at the University of California, Berkeley, where we won a national championship. And I got to be on a team with Missy Franklin and a lot of other really incredible female athletes. And when my time at Berkeley came to an end, I just kind of was like, wow, like, okay, this didn't happen for me. Like these dreams didn't come true. And I felt really empty, like striving for this like gold medal and like my whole life for what in a way. And so then I found out high diving, you know, moving in the direction of becoming an Olympic sport. And so I thought, you know, why not? And I went cliff jumping, and I remember that first jump being like, oh my gosh, this is why I kept doing it. This is why I didn't stop diving and give up at that 10-meter dream. And so once I started to learn how to high dive, I booked a one-way flight to England to learn. There's really no training facilities in the United States and really around the world with a 20-meter platform. Most of the time you go to a competition and you just go up and sometimes do a dive for the very first time in warm-ups before you compete it. There's just nowhere to try it around the world. Now they're starting to build pools. But when I first got into it, that wasn't a thing. And it's definitely, it's really hard to become a professional cliff diver, especially as a female. One, because it's kind of generally accepted, like boys can be adrenaline junkies. They can go, you know, throw themselves off cliffs, and like, it's just things boys do for fun. And I remember actually once I was at a cliff jumping spot and a mom came up to me and was like, aren't those boys so stupid? Us girls are so much smarter than them. We wouldn't do that. And I just like looked at her like, what, really? And then I actually went and jumped off the cliff. I was like, no, I'll do it too. And so it definitely is really hard to find that balance between like, no, this is what I love to do. And this is a professional sport. And it's okay, like being a female doing these extreme things. And like, I would consider myself like a girly girl, and I love to get dressed up. I love to do everything, you know, really feminine, but yet like I'm in this male dominated extreme sport. And it's been really hard to kind of be both things because people assume like you can't be both things. And then also just with it being newer for females, like we just joined the series after the men. It wasn't always a boys and girls in the series together. And so with that being said, the girls have like some catching up to do in terms of like getting their skills up to a higher standard that's equal to the boys. But that's because we haven't been doing it as long, and it takes more time. So in terms of like what it's like being professional as like a female versus a male, I mean, it stinks to say it, but at the end of the day, like the boys have way more opportunities. They have way more competitions they can compete in, and they have way higher prize money. Fortunately, that is starting to turn around and change. And I just believe it's because we haven't been in the sport as long, but it's definitely great seeing that progress moving in the right direction, and starting to see sponsors and people who are typically supporting the males in this side, this extreme sports industry, now starting to be like, no, it's okay to like support girls doing this too. So that's kind of been a little bit of my journey in terms of being a female in the sport.
That's pretty fascinating. I'm a big fan of watching all things cliff jumping, as you know, and cliff diving. So to see the evolution of young girls wanting to get into that, maybe there will come a point where people don't need to be springboard divers. They can just be cliff divers or cliff jumpers. No different than snowboarding has paved the way of freestyle for snow. So Kamika, building off of that, first of all, I have to say not too many people, including professional US football players like receivers, can outrun you. So someday I'd love to see that. We line them all up and who can beat who. But, your training is so all on, it's 24/7. And as you mentioned, you're now getting ready to compete and turn on your high performance over the next several months en route to Tokyo. Like, how have you been using your voice with your followers, with your fans, or just, your voice as a platform for women in the sport or other females, whether they be high school or college or otherwise? How are you going about that?
I definitely feel like the pandemic and having to slow down off of the track has really helped. I've been using my voice on my platform to really just help increase representation and like the visibility of female athletes to be able to market themselves and have great opportunities. And even as like a Black woman, we have a completely different pathway and a different struggle in that area. Even though track and field in the sprints area is very dominated with African Americans, but when it comes to marketing ourselves and creating those opportunities to support ourselves outside of the sport, that was where I found that I really wanted to use my passion and my voice to speak on those that necessarily didn't feel like their voice was heard. And so I created Meet My Melanin, and we speak to students, we speak to organizations on being seen, heard, and known in all spaces, which is my shirt here. And I think like this has really changed because with the pandemic, we had like global protests after George Floyd. And from my personal experience, I was denied a magazine cover for not fitting the look. So this magazine cover, even though it was for the fastest woman in Canada campaign, I didn't get it because I didn't fit the look. And for me, I made it my mission, my goal to speak on this and continue to have these conversations so that another young Black girl that is going through sports feels like she can be included, that she belongs in any room that she wants to be in. And yeah, that is essentially what I'm trying to do.
Have you found, out of curiosity, since those moments over the last year, in particular, the Black Lives Matter movement and so forth, have you found that being a new calling for you to really stand up and bring your voice out? Does it feel like a safer, better, stronger place for you as a woman doing that? Maybe you can share a little bit about that.
Absolutely. I think with everything that kind of slowed down, we were forced to pay attention, and we were forced to look at how our world was operating for so many years. And I think that we, like, as a unit, people came together to say, no, this is wrong. We need to have these conversations. We need to have change. And once I feel like I found my voice in the midst of other people's voices just uniting, it became bigger than just me. It became for everybody to just feel included, and, to understand that I am human first and I am an athlete. So having everybody feel included and feeling like they belong as a human first before what they do was really, really important. And, I'm really happy with the progress that we're making. We're having these conversations outside of just the month of February. And I'm grateful for opportunities like this where I can share my story and inspire those who are up and coming and inspire those who want to help, whether, they may experience these same experiences, but I think it's just the uniting that is so important.
That's awesome. I'm here to tell you, you can have a front cover with Obsesh anytime, and there is no just 1 month for being human. So thank you very much. Danielle, your time as a pro basketball player here, both in the US and abroad gives you a unique perspective, especially because we see basketball as one of the big 4 league sports in the US. It has been since, I'm probably going way back, 30, 40 years. And so you've got this unique perspective. Some of the trends taking place now with women, the WNBA players, seem to be creating this new paradigm for like female strength, where you've got more passion and physicality, and sweat and grit are kind of like the new, I hate to say it, the new, look and feel. A little bit what Kamiko was saying, she didn't fit the look and the feel. Do you have a perspective on what prevents women in sport from achieving, whether it be a momentary potential or their full potential? Just love to hear more from you on that.
I would definitely agree with you that it's changing. I mean, just yesterday, I was watching something on social media. It was a advertisement, I think it was from Nike, and it was uplifting women in sports and all about, I don't remember the phrase that they used, in all honesty, but it was showing the passion and the physicality of women in sports and how that is changing, and it's becoming more recognized, which I think is fantastic. I mean, I remember growing up, me being 6'4", also, it definitely adds in a factor with that, that people on the court, they'd be like, oh, like, she's so aggressive, she's so whatever. And I'm like, I really wasn't. It was just because I was 6'4", I was, I was tall, I was big. There's nothing I could do about it, really. And it took a really long time for me to really tap into that and be like, it's okay to be aggressive. This, especially as a post player playing basketball, it's not something that would be negative. It's actually something that people strive for in basketball. But because I'm a woman and because I'm 6'4", I feel like, growing up, it was one of those things where you don't want to be seen as aggressive because I'm so tall, and I don't want to be seen as big. I'm very thankful. My mother always had me stand up straight. It didn't really matter that I was 6'4". And, she said, like, you can be 2 different people on the court. You can be, Danielle Diamond, the basketball player, you're aggressive, you go to the basket, you work hard, and then off the court, be Danielle Diamond, the human. And you can still be an aggressive individual in, pursuing your passions and everything like that. But it was never, you couldn't be aggressive, or you couldn't be physical on or off the court. It was just be who you are, so I'm very thankful that I was brought up in an environment that encouraged me to just be who I was as an individual, regardless of, quote unquote social norms or what people expected women in basketball to be like. Definitely overseas, as far as women in sports, I mean, Tracy, you and I were just talking about this yesterday. I was telling you one of my experiences while I was playing overseas in Israel. Our league got shut down for, I think it was about, I don't know, a week, 2 weeks, something like that, because the Israeli women's basketball players wanted more, they wanted to be seen more. They wanted more exposure. And, they were having us rearrange our basketball times for our games because there were silly TV shows being put in and taking like our normal game time. So say our games are normally televised. If they're televised, we play at 6:10, something like that. Well, I remember there was times that they wanted us to play at 9 p.m. because something else was being shown during that time, and so I think that plus, you see it more here in the States now, especially within the last year or so, but the WNBA has been behind, social movements for more years than anyone even realized until now. One of my really good friends, and actually someone who I admire completely, if you were to ask me who I look up to as a basketball player, it is Alicia Clark. She was called to multiple training camps, never got an opportunity until she landed with Seattle. And she just kept on grinding and grinding. And now she's using her stance as a basketball player. And, she went to the bubble last year, But when they won the tournament or when they won the championship, she has an interview, she says, this is for all the little girls out there who think that they can't do it. This is for them. And she's one of those people who has taken her position in sports and used it for good, on so many different levels. So it's great to see people here in the States and overseas that are using their platform to use their voice to stand up for something.
That's awesome. Those are great examples. So Fanny, let's switch to the Freeride World Tour. For the audience, if you're not familiar, the Freeride World Tour, it's a worldwide circuit of freeride snowboarding and skiers, both men and women, with the best riders in the world and the most challenging of alpine faces that they experience everywhere. I can't even imagine being one of those riders, but we've got both Fanny here. So let's talk with you, and then we'll talk with Erica, who is actually on tour right now with the Freeride World Tour, and she's in between her second and her third run of competition. So Fanny, the complexity of niche sports, gender, you've got the nichest of all sports. You've got the most extreme riders in the world. There is no path down the hill. They just make it their own. What prevents snow sports in general, especially with the Freeride World Tour, what prevents the tour from achieving its full potential, or from the women on the tour achieving that full potential? Is it old norms? Is it maybe it's just too young and it will be in time? How do you see that? And what do you think are some of the things that prevent that full potential?
There's so many things, actually. First, like freeriding is a niche sport, as you said. It's when you can see in general as how hard it is to like showcase the female action in any other sport. I'll let you imagine how hard it is for freeriding, but still, like, women are taking the same risk. It's sure that there is a difference of level between ski men, snowboard men, skier female, and snowboard female. But yeah, I think that for a long time, there was not a real strategy in terms of communication, in terms of ethics behind the sports. I think it's a super young sport league, like the Freeride World Tour only exists since like 2008. So it's young. The freeriders, female freeriders started just, I don't know, it's maybe 20 years ago, something like that. So it's super young. And I also think that it's just recently that the Freeride World Tour took into consideration gender equality. Like last year, they decided to put the prize money equal for all categories. And it's just recently too that we decided to like push the sports in juniors level, like when freeriders are starting like maybe at 10 years, and from their really youth until like they're growing on like Freeride Junior Tour, Freeride World Qualifier. We're trying to push more and more like the female categories and the values around it. So yeah, I hope I answered the question. I'm not sure.
Well, yeah, you did perfectly. Just so the audience can get a perspective, you now have an equal prize money at the podiums. Do you have the same amount of women riders as men riders, both in ski and snowboard?
No, that's a problem. Actually, it's like, for me, it's the next step. We implement like equal prize money last year, but we don't have the same number of riders. We have like maybe 15 female riders, again, 25 male riders, but it's like a representation of the quotas of licensee riders that you can find on qualifiers and juniors level. And when you watch the number of licensee riders in like snowboard woman category and skier female category, it just had increased. It's like since 2015, I think the licensee has doubled. So it's like insane, but still we don't see this change yet on the Freeride World Tour. And it's like a hard decision to make, you know. We have to afford the same spot for women and for men, but in the same time, you have to be fair too, you know. There are so many skiers and so many snowboarders male that are fighting to go on tour, and it's a really hard decisions to make. And it's at some point, if you decide to be like an avant-gardist league, if you decide to take a decision to make the sport grow, you have to afford the same amount of spots in all different categories. So for me, it's just a position to take and a decision to make. And for now, it's like mainly men on the head of the Freeride World Tour. I'm like basically the only woman in comms team, and I'm always the only one saying, yeah, we just like showcase men action all the time, and it's not possible. And even in like our communication through newsletters, through social medias, it's like super hard to make them understand that we are underrepresented. And that's hard, but I feel they are improving, and I have hope for the future. And we have Erica with us.
Speaking of which, Erica, building off of that, what do you see it as your perspective, just day to day in the mountain versus also just on the podiums of competing in the world's top freeride world tour?
Well, I think like what Fanny said, I just think that there's a huge underrepresentation for females just in general, like whether that's on the competition side or just in, you know, skiing around the resort. Like it still amazes me when you hear people on the hill be like surprised that they see a girl out there like ripping and they're like, oh, like that was a chick. And it's like, yeah, like, yeah, it was a chick. Like, and why are you surprised that she's doing that, you know? And to me, it's gotten to the point where it's like, you know, we do take the same risks. We have to pay the same amount of money. We're putting our bodies through the same amount of turmoil, you know, the mental thing too. And what we have to deal with on the mental side, I think, is far more challenging than what the men have to deal with, because we have been conditioned our entire lives to not believe that we're as good and not believe that we will get the same opportunities or that we even deserve the opportunities. Or you hear, you know, I've been told many times in my snowboarding career, like, oh, well, you should just be grateful that like you get to do it. And it's like, of course I'm grateful I get to do what I love to do. That's not the point of what I'm saying though. Like the men don't have to deal with that same stuff. And for us, you know, it's like before you even start, you're expected to fail. And so going into a sport with that on your shoulders, I think is a huge challenge for all women, but especially young women looking at what we're doing and, you know, trying to have a pathway kind of laid out for them. And it's like, you know, it's got to be challenging to look at what's going on and be like, okay, like, can I make a career out of this? Like, is this even possible for me? And as we've all proven, like, it is possible. But like I said before, I think we just have to try a lot harder, and we also have to hold ourselves in such a different way, because if you are too attractive, then you're only getting stuff because you're pretty. Or if you're too aggressive, like Danielle said, then oh, she, you know, we don't want to be next to her. And it's just there's so many different layers of what's expected of you. And, you know, at the end of the day, like, we just want to go out and do what we love to do. And it shouldn't be this huge discussion of like whether or not we deserve to have the same opportunities that the men have their birthright to have.
I know when I was competing when I was younger, there was definitely a defining moment for me where, you know, the light the light switch went off to like, oh no, I'm not going to just show you I should be out here. I'm going to beat you while I'm out here and competing. Was there any moment for any of you where you felt like things changed, to your point, from just how I'm going to compete to what I'm going to show other women that stand out to you? Whether, Erica on the mountain, if it's like, this person's doing this jump, oh no, I can do that, or anything else from any of you, where you knew your power was like all within you, like you had what you needed to set your new bar.
Well, I think for me personally, that's like an everyday challenge. You go out and you go riding with boys and they're doing something, you're like, oh, well, I can do that too. Like, we're constantly having to show up and level up. And that's what, is great about Obsesh, is that we have this platform to be able to help other females level up and give them some of those mental tricks that, like, for me, the mental part of it is like probably the most challenging, because like I said, all of the things before, where we're just less is expected of us just in general. So to be able to like take that out of your mind and just go and do what you're capable of doing, because you physically know you're able to do it and mentally you're just as strong, and then going and proving that is like the most empowering feeling, I think.
I agree with you. Oh, sorry, Tracy.
No.
I was just gonna say, Eric, I definitely agree with you, because I mean, like when I was younger, all my AAU teams, like we would play against boys when I was younger. I can remember in like 5th grade, we were playing against the 7th grade boys, getting our butts handed to us on silver platters pretty regularly. But like as we got better, my 8th grade AAU team, we made it to the Junior Olympics, and it was so much fun being there. And it's the same team that I grew up with, playing against all these boys when we were younger, and it really set us ahead, in my opinion. So then when we were invited to Junior Olympics and we were beating the boys teams as we got older, it does make you feel empowered. Like, okay, kind of like how you were saying, you constantly are working to prove yourself. And then when you do prove yourself, it's like kind of in your face, like, yes, we're girls, but we can do this too. And especially in basketball, well, really in all sports, but you see it a lot in basketball, maybe just because it's my world that I live in. But I feel like there's so many boys or men who are just like, oh, well, like I'll hoop you up any day. Like I can't tell you the number of times that I walk somewhere and someone's like, oh, you're 6'4", that doesn't mean anything, I can still beat you. Like let's go play a one-on-one. And it's just like, first of all, like what makes you think that I even want to play one-on-one against you? Second of all, like you have so many people who don't fully understand women's basketball, but you have the NBA players, you have LeBron, you have Steph Curry, all like, the big names, and they're out here supporting women's basketball, and because they understand what it takes for us to get there, because they've gone through it. Yes, like they're in the NBA. Yes, they make a ton more money than the WNBA players do, but also like Ellie was saying, WNBA came along a lot longer after the NBA. So we're finally, I say we as if I'm in the WNBA, but we as in, women's basketball players, we're finally starting to make our mark, I feel like, and people are starting to respect us. And it does help to have the NBA players, fully support what the WNBA players do. But it is kind of like once you get to that point, you're just like, yeah, like in your face, we can do this too. It just doesn't matter that we're girls or that we're women,
So it's not just me that thought this for the last, it still has that feeling to it. Kamika, you probably train a lot individually. As I know some other track and field athletes, there's a lot of individualism until all of a sudden you get out there and then you're like, oh, here we go. You're with everybody versus team sports, What's it been like? Was there a defining moment? I'm a big fan of like how you're using your voice and really creating, a brand out of that, to use that voice for change. Was there a moment that all of a sudden was defined for you? Like, oh, it's not just about me and the track. It's like something else.
Yeah, I think 2015 was that point for me where it became not only just about me, but about others. You know, I heard stories about athletes that had to cut off their dreads to get opportunities or things like that. And I just even, you know, outside of just race, like I think we have like a body image issue in our sport as well. You know, like as a sprinter, I'm predominantly very muscular. Like my sport, like my event requires me to be very strong and powerful. And I think, you know, there's so much stigma of young girls being told like, oh, you run like a girl. And, you know, for me, like that always bothered me. I had a lot of insecurities when I was younger in terms of like my build. And I really just want girls to know, like, you can be fierce and feminine at the same time. Like when I'm out there on the track and I'm racing, yeah, you know, I'm strong and I'm powerful, but that doesn't make me any less feminine than what society or what, you know, is the typical ideal body type, which to me doesn't exist. I think all body types are beautiful. So for me, like, I think that has been my thing where like, I like to get dolled up and that is just something for me. And I think highlighting that body image issue in our sport and not telling girls that if they're a little bit more toned or stronger, that they look more manly and they're not feminine enough, and just making sure that the two exist. Like you can be fierce and feminine at the same time.
I like that. That might just become our new t-shirts. Here's by Kamika. Here we are at this like critical new era of all kinds of new sports, women on the rise, still so much to accomplish ahead of us. I'd love to hear the perspective from this group in particular. If you look forward, you know, 10 years from now or 5 years from now, what are some things you'd love to see changed in your sport for women, or what is now the generation who will have to make that choice? Can I pursue this path? Should I pursue this path? Is this my calling? Is there any other path I can think about? So I'd love to open it up. What would you like to see changed in your sport or for women athletes overall?
I would personally like to see just the representation equaling out a bit. As we touched on a lot, it sounds like all of us came from the same sort of perspective where there just weren't as many girls, weren't as many females in the sport. And now we're at this point where, you know, there is a lot of interest, and like the numbers have shown, like there's more interest than ever. And I hope that the industry sees this opportunity as a chance to give these girls a way to show their talent to the world. And I just want there to be more opportunities for the younger generations to make a career out of this and not have to deal with the same struggles that I think all of us have faced and continue to face on a daily basis.
I'll be honest, I hope for next generation that they know more than just, you know, like Tracy said, the big four sports, because before joining Obsesh, I had absolutely no idea the crazy stuff that you guys do, that it was even, you know, an opportunity for people they had to go jump off cliffs. I just think you're crazy, Ellie, but I think it's awesome that you do it, you know, in the same with, you know, the snowboarding in the middle of nowhere with no set trail to go. Like, I think that's absolutely outstanding. And it's something that I think a lot of people don't know about. So my hope would be that stuff like that would be more knowledgeable and more at hand for people to be aware of, to even consider going into it, or becoming fans of it.
I would build off of what Erica said. Like, I would want to see an increased representation there on all levels. Like, I think any young girl, if they see someone that looks like them in any sport of what their desire is, they know that they can do that. And I think women, we need to have more women in leadership positions, coaching positions, like from top to bottom. I think that's so important. One, to not only market these athletes, but have them attract young girls to the sports. But I think it's really important to make sure that they are supported and have that leadership so that they can stay and be kept in the sport. I think a lot of women are drawn away from sport because of the lack of support, because it's a very male dominated industry. If I had more female coaches or more women that were in positions of leaderships, I think there would be a lot more protection for women and female athletes that would just create a better and healthy environment for them.
It's a huge point. Ellie, Fanny?
Going off what you were saying is I totally agree. Being in a sport that is so male dominated, like up until very recently, there was like, 6 more guys than girls on each tour stop. And like, there was always more guys. So there's always more opportunities for boys to stay in the sport. So it made sense to keep trying for one more year to make the series or to make your country's team. Whereas as a girl, it's like, well, if you're not one of those 6 girls in the world, then you don't get to do it and you can't make an income doing it. And so what are you going to do? Spend your own, like every dime you have to go like continue to chase it. So it's a really hard, at least for high diving or cliff diving and even like normal traditional diving, for females, it's a really hard sport to stay in if you're not the very best. So I think by having, more women included in the sport and more opportunities, it will create more opportunities, because right now it's at this phase where like, if you're not the best, it's not worth doing, which makes sports as a whole like really discouraging. And I think what I've learned, like I spent my whole life trying to be the best and like that didn't happen. And now I found this new sport and sure, I'm at the top of it, but I'm not the number one person, and I'm totally okay with that. And I think it's not always about winning. Like winning is great, but at the end of the day, it's like the experience and being involved in something bigger than yourself that's so important and unique about sports.
That's a huge perspective. Fanny, anything from you, given the fact you have a leadership role in one of those tours?
Yeah, we are maybe like 25 people working 100% of head water, and I think we are like 5 women.
Mm-hmm.
The 5 women, I think I'm the only one to really talk about like feminism and like gender equality. It's like, I don't know if it's kind of a slang word when you pronounce like these kind of words like equality, feminism. So I hope for the next generation, and I hope that thing will change, that we can just freely talk about like the lack of women representation in sport industry. Luckily, there are the athletes we are here, like Erica and some other female athletes who are like militating for making things change. And that's helped me a lot, because, if you're alone to take risk, and because if I just talk too much about feminism, I could also lose my job, So yeah, it's a huge thing to support each other, actually. So I wish for the next generation that women will be more supportive between each other, and that at some point we will have more women in leadership in sport industry for sure.
That's great.
Tracy, I would also just like to add that not only representation in our own sports, but we've seen over the last few years women in male sports getting coaching positions or front office positions, that I think it's great to see that, barriers being broken in that aspect as well. And just to know that if I want to go coach an NBA team, I might not be the right person for it, but I have that opportunity now because those barriers are being broken and the glass ceiling shattered.
Yeah, it's a really great point. As I've seen some great headlines, I got super excited to see, the first female official at the Super Bowl this year. While the Super Bowl is a very American sport, and finite, to your point, it broke a barrier by seeing, I think we just had our first African-American or Black female get a second job in the NFL, just announced, or Katie Sowers was, coaching at the NFL. I think the more we see that, the more it gives women that power to say, hell yeah, I can do that, which is great. So being able to envision yourself in those roles is truly a reflection based on largely the media you see, The covers you see on a magazine, the social media that you see, those are the things that every generation deserves to see their own self-reflected through others that are there.
Yeah, and in the medias, I feel like there is a huge change since like the last couple of years, because we passed the equal prize money in the free aborto, is also because we really had a bad coverage. There was like a former snowboarder who were militating for the equal prize money, and all the medias are really willing to talk about these matters now, which was not the case maybe 5-10 years ago. So I think that even if sometimes journalists can just put some obstacles on your ways, it's also sometimes a way to make things change. Yeah. And it's always the best leverage when you present something to a CEO or I don't know, head of communication whatsoever, to like say, hey, it's like we had a bad image because we are not like in the modern world, and we are like, yeah. So I don't know how to say. We are like living in the past, and we have to do like new things and inspire new generation. Otherwise, we're gonna be dead in like 10 years.
Yes. Add quickly about like breaking barriers. I think what I want to see and what we're starting to do really well is changing the stigma around things. And I found that there was a lot of female athletes that wanted to have families, let's just say, and the sports industry would be like, oh, like you're done, your career is done, you had a child, like, you can't come back, you can't. And to see mothers that had children and came back into the sport and thrive and win and medal and be better than they've ever been is so powerful. But just even on a supporting level, I think with sponsorships, Nike starting to change their policies instead of reducing or cutting female athletes, their contracts just because they are out having a child. I think that's so important. And even for Canada, so we have government funding. And so if you are at an elite level, they will support you and provide funding for you. And you're allowed one injury carding. And for so many years that if you got pregnant, they counted that as an injury, which is like, I really was frustrated with how they put women in boxes that if you're in the sport, you have to be in the sport, but you can't do anything else. So I like to see that we're continuing to challenge those norms and those stigmas and giving women the flexibility to make those decisions and still be able to come back into sports and feel invited.
That one threw me there, Kamika. It's you get one injury card, and having a child is labeled as an injury. That is crazy, So to be able to see that change, we've got to do it. So across generations, we can learn from each other. What is it that each of you hope as athletes, whether you're current, about to be competing, on the podium, just retired, what is it that you hope others hear in your voice? Because those that'll be watching this, they could be struggling with some of the same things we're talking about here. So what is it that you hope they hear from you? Why don't we start with Kamika?
I would say that if there are rooms that you see yourself that you want to be in, I like to use this terminology of grab a folding chair, and you feel like you don't have a seat at that table, grab a folding chair, or, build that room that you want to be in. I think we've seen a lot of people that didn't feel included in certain spaces. And what they did was they built their own and then invited other people into those rooms. And one day it will be it will be accepted. So I would just say be courageous enough to be the first. It's okay if you don't see people that look like you that are doing the same things or what you want to do or what you are passionate about speaking about. Be courageous enough to be the first and bring your folding chair in that room and have a seat and stand in your full power and your full potential.
That's awesome. Anybody else?
I love that. And kind of going off that, I have a similar saying. I always say, kind of fake it till you make it. And I say that to myself, and I say that to my athletes. I coach diving as well. And so in a way, like you're saying, bring your folding chair until it turns into, you know, the head of the table. Same thing, like you can do it, even if you're not there yet, like trick yourself. So like when I have athletes who are really scared to do a dive or something, like they're learning something new, you know, at the end of the day, fear and excitement are like the same physiological response. It's just how we choose to like perceive it. Like we can choose, are we scared or are we excited? And so like fake it till you make it. If you know you are kind of more on the scared side, just fake it that it's all excitement. And that'll kind of ease those nerves, but let yourself try things and don't let fear hold you back.
That's great. Erica, I know you got words for the next.
What I want people to take away from what I'm specifically saying in this conversation is that there are people like myself and like Danielle and like Ellie and Fanny and Kamika and yourself who are fighting this fight for everyone. And we're super passionate and we want to do this to give everybody the opportunities that we had to work harder than we probably should have for. And there is no right or wrong way to make it as a professional athlete or to pursue your dream and your passion. And you can do it however it suits you. So just because somebody tells you you're supposed to do it one way or another, don't listen to that. Stay true to yourself and remember that there's a lot of people out there that support that you may not even know have your back like we do.
I was always told to surround myself with not only just people who have good morals and values, but people from different walks of life. So whether that's someone who's in a position where you want to be, someone who, you know, is where you used to be and they're striving to get to where you are. But for me, it's always surround yourself. Like I have been blessed, honestly, that basketball has taken me to so many different parts of the world. And I've been able to meet people from different walks of life, different backgrounds, different cultures. And I think it's one of my biggest assets, and it has helped me thoroughly just be able to view the world and view people as individuals rather than, oh, I expect her to be like this, so, you know, I'm going to act one way or another. Like you never know where people come from until you start to learn about them. And I think in order to reach where you want to go, whether, you know, that's in basketball, whether that's in track, cliff jumping, snowboarding, whatever you want to do, even outside of sports, you need to surround yourself with people who are going to uplift you and try to push you to your limits. And in my opinion, one of the best ways to do that is, like I said, to surround yourself with people from different walks of life, and especially with people who are at where you want to be at. And that doesn't have to be in your lane. You know, I mean, I can see someone excelling in marketing, and, you know, they have their own life lessons that they can tell me in order for me to reach what I want to do. You know, I don't know, say I'm a lawyer in law, you know, but everyone has different experiences that most people in my experience are very happy to share with you.
That's great. Fanny?
Yeah, I don't have much to add, guys. But I think that I would say to the next generation that there are no rules. You create your own world, despite what everybody is gonna try to make you believe. Yeah, you create your own rules, and the most important, I'd say, is like just remain yourself. Yeah, be true to yourself, and try to listen your guts, listen your passion. Just invent your own words and remain free as you can.
Those are great words of advice. I want to thank each one of you. And for the audience, I want to thank you for participating and listening in today. You've had a wonderful group of badass women that are leading, changing, using their voice, and competing every single day, whether they're competing in life, competing for the podium, competing on the mountain, track, cliff, court. We're all competing. And so if you want to take an experience with any one of these women, I encourage you, you can do so now through the Obsesh Marketplace app. That's at obsesh.com. So I want to thank everybody. And I wish you the best. I wish you well, and let's do this again sometime. Thanks, guys.